Coming up next, we have Ross Guberman. He is the founder and CEO of BriefCatch, an AI-powered legal writing platform trusted by top law firms, judges, and government agencies to sharpen briefs, opinions, and complex documents. With that, Ross, welcome to the event.
Yeah, great to be here. So I've spent almost my whole career in and around law firms, and I've also interacted with clients, and I've actually been a client of law firms myself. And right now, like in the throes of AI, I'm seeing one of the strangest phenomena I've ever seen when it comes to clients and firms. So you have, lawyers generally try to please their clients, of course, but you really have two kind of countervailing forces going on right now. So I actually heard a story the other day from a partner who said, I can't say the name of the Fortune 100 corporation, but this partner got an email from one person at the corporation saying, hey, we just want to remind you that we have a sort of, AI skeptical policy here, and we really want to make sure you and your associates aren't using Gen AI on our work product. And then just a couple of hours later, the same partner got another email from another executive at the same Fortune 100 company saying, just a reminder to our outside counsel that we really expect our firms to be doing everything they can to use the best of Gen AI to reduce cost and improve efficiency. So you can kind of identify with both parties here. We're all trying to kind of figure out what's going on. And since my particular expertise in the field is with writing, which is very personal to lawyers and very important to clients, given that contracts and briefs often determine their fate, I've really been kind of a firsthand witness to all of this. And I've got my own thoughts on what's really going on right now when it comes to the law and AI. And more important probably for you, what's coming down the pike in the months and even years to come. So what I want to do, since I'm very familiar with the arguments, I'm very familiar with Gen AI, and I'm really familiar with legal tech and law firms and clients, what I want to do is kind of break down my experience for you into two chunks. The first will be trying to make sense of a lot of the AI skeptical positions that you'll hear, or maybe even feel yourself, or maybe even if you're, friendly with lawyers or interact with lawyers, you hear them express. So I want to break those down first. But then, given that a lot of these objections are real, but they're sometimes taken out of context, or they're very tied to a particular moment in tech that's probably going to disappear before we know it. I want to spend the rest of my time letting you know what I see as some of the really exciting developments coming down the pike when it comes to efficiency and even better practice, better access to justice, all through Gen AI and the law. All right, so let's go through some of the kind of the recurring anxieties or the recurring concerns that you'll hear, you'll see, and you probably wonder about yourself if you follow the news. So probably the biggest thing that people associate when it comes to Gen AI and the law, at least on the negative side, is what's called kind of the case hallucination problem. So pretty much everyone's generally familiar with the hallucination issue. You can have very official looking output from very prominent Gen AI LLMs, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, what have you. And you'll unfortunately find out that it's inaccurate or it's misleading despite its sort of official vernacular and, seriousness of purpose on the surface. So this is probably no other profession as prominent as it is in the law. There's actually a case that made the New York Times, maybe the front page, if I remember correctly. It was an aviation case. It was aviation case originally, but the reason it made the news is the lawyer got in big trouble for citing a bunch of fake cases in a brief and becoming very embarrassed and causing sort of an international firestorm of worry. So what's happened since then is kind of a quieter story. You actually have all sorts of countermeasures in place at the LLMs themselves, but also in the legal tech world. This problem is actually disappearing. Probably by the time you hear me talk, it's probably going to be almost gone, even though it's a very, very acute problem. Because what happens in these cases is there are no guardrails in place in the process. So there's no sort of double and triple checking against recognized databases of cases and statutes. And that's why you get these really embarrassing stories. So although this is a really legitimate fear, and I get why it has such popular appeal, this is not really going to be an enduring argument against the growth and development of AI and the law. As I said, as we're sitting here, as I'm talking to you, people are figuring this out, putting the guardrails in place to make this problem probably pretty soon a thing of the past. So that's anxiety number one. Now, anxiety number two is one that law firm clients or customers also share quite a bit. And that's another general problem with Gen AI related to security, data security, and confidentiality. As you know, you have attorney-client privilege. You also are supposed to keep work product confidential. There are really legitimate concerns about, putting in client information or even draft lawyer work product in ChatGPT or Claude. And next thing you know, the fear suggests these LLMs are training on your data, confidential information about you, your company, or the lawyer's work product is now kind of immersed in there, and all hell breaks loose. Again, this is real, right? It's absolutely a real concern. It's a real concern for lawyers, perhaps more than even most professionals. But as I said, when it comes to case hallucinations, people are on top of this. Okay, so number one, there's a lot of confusion. People will say, OpenAI is going to get your data, Anthropic is going to get your data. Well, absolutely, you can't make an absolute statement like that at all. Lawyers are generally thought to be kind of behind on tech. Since the pandemic, that's not been so true, but lawyers are absolutely very risk averse. So people hear these things and they panic and they worry, and then they say, well, I'm just going to sort of close my eyes to Gen AI. The truth is, these companies kind of know what they're doing, right? They know who's going to really bring home the bacon for them. And as long as you have the right kind of account and the right kind of account settings and the right parameters in place, this is probably as secure as Microsoft Word or Outlook. Okay, so that's another real concern. It's legitimate, but it's sort of waning as we speak. And if you are interested in lawyers being more efficient, I can guarantee you that if law firms use legal tech, that legal tech has like SOC 2, it has zero retention policies, it has all the different guardrails in place again to mitigate against those security concerns. So that kind of knocks out another major point of resistance to Gen AI and the law, which of course I think you can probably guess is a good thing, right? Because as we're going to discuss in a moment, the benefits are pretty thrilling as long as the risks are mitigated. All right. Now, number three is also something that many people worry about their kids, about society, about civilization. And it's a broader problem than just hallucinations or security. And it's the idea that, just to put it bluntly, Gen AI makes people kind of stupid and lazy. And we don't want law students being lazy. We don't want lawyers being lazy. We don't want a whole generation not being cognitively challenged and having to figure out tough problems on their own, because as soon as they have the slightest issue in thinking, they jump to ChatGPT and there's the answer. So again, I above my pay grade to solve the problem for the nation's children or for civilization at large. But I do think in the law, this problem is actually quite exaggerated as well. Keep in mind, of course, people said the same thing about spell check. They said the same thing about, in the legal profession, electronic legal research. People were worried about track changes, making everyone no longer able to write. Generally, these things don't really pan out when it comes to, the naysayers. So now there is absolutely a risk of laziness and shortcuts, and no doubt about it. But what people who are savvy about AI and the law are starting to realize is you can actually often have the best of both worlds if you know what you're doing. So in other words, you use tools not to kind of replace thinking, but to get a lot of the tedious tasks done quickly and accurately, so you can then save your time and energy for more complicated strategic planning type tasks. That's number one. And then number two, if you have the right kinds of tools and if you're using Gen AI effectively, what you end up doing is actually making yourself smarter, making your work more incisive, because you'll find ways to sort of interrogate what you've written. Like, let's say you write a brief, you try to get counter arguments that somebody might make through Gen AI. Drafting a stock purchase agreement, you might try to find provisions that are not market or that contradict each other. There are all sorts of ways you can use these tools to actually have a better allocation of resources, number one, and number two, to really make you think and really challenge yourself in ways that are often not quite as easy when you're simply on your own. All right, so last legitimate concern. What about bias? You'll hear this a lot. It's biased, right? Garbage in, garbage out, or it's like memorializing bad tendencies in society. So what do you do about all that? Well, number one, it's also real, I would have to say, in the sense that the outputs are based on the inputs in the actual LLMs, which no one really knows. They're sort of a black box. So, of course, if you ask a legal question, you're getting answers based on an array of existing precedent and statutes, and you might think that particular mix is not accurate. Or really what happens a lot of the time, people accuse the output of being biased is they actually don't like the source material in the first place. So in other words, they'll blame AI for something that they really have a problem with in, let's say, the development of the law or the case law or even, the administrative state. So as with all types of bias, it's really about judgment. And I'm not really sure the problem is that much different when you're looking at ChatGPT output than it is when you're looking at your own thoughts, or even, you're reading opinions by judges who have biases of their own. Okay, so this is another example of something that is a general systemic problem in a profession that for some reason, when it emerges in the AI context, gets people really kind of bent out of shape. And we often kind of get confused between problems, again, in society, problems in source material, problems in whatever's going into these LLMs and the LLMs themselves. One example, by the way, would be, if you say something about, well, we're going to have AI judges in a couple of years, people freak out and they think that's terrible, a terrible idea. Well, I'm not so sure, right? I'm not so sure. Judges, many studies, even the most diligent judges have their own biases, not necessarily the kind of biases you're thinking of, but they're distracted, they're tired, they don't like the color tie somebody is wearing. Humans have a lot of biases as well. Incidentally, one thing I've noticed with lawyers in discussions of legal AI is people love to bash lawyers, except when there's something that goes wrong in Gen AI legal output. Then the comparison group, human lawyers, is elevated to perfection, and every single flaw in Gen AI is magnified. It's really interesting. It's like there are two times people tend to like lawyers. In that case, and they tend to like their own lawyers. Otherwise, we tend to be bashed. Okay, so now let's get to the benefits. And again, some of these are works in progress. Some of these will require the risks I listed earlier to be truly mitigated. But there are several really exciting things going on that in the end are going to be really great for all different types of law firm clients, and also, frankly, for the many people in our country who can't really access lawyers at all and need either kind of authoritative bits of advice or simple legal documents or both. Okay, so category one, I would say, is anything related to actual legal documents. So that would include legal research. It would include drafting documents in the first place, and it would certainly include improving documents that are already drafted. Some of the reasons this is really promising are the pattern recognition that's inherent in these LLMs. So if you're negotiating something in business and you share a provision that one of the parties is trying to get you to adopt, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini have access to thousands and thousands of similar provisions, and perhaps even kind of studies on those provisions, and even maybe things that happen after those provisions were executed as part of a larger agreement. And that can be incredibly valuable. It's almost impossible for any one lawyer to have that kind of sample size, even with the most incredible pattern recognition skills. That's something really, 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 really valuable. So I'm sort of in this business. We have a product, BriefCatch, that edits legal documents, and what I've found is it also has not a perfect sense, but a generally good sense of sort of great lawyering and bad lawyering. So in other words, it's not just looking at a huge pile of legal work product and kind of shrugging its shoulders and giving you lowest common denominator. It has an inherent sense of what's better and worse. And again, it's very hard for any one lawyer to have that sort of knowledge at hand. So this is again something that's changing by the day. I'm the first one to say that I would not recommend going to ChatGPT and having a motion drafted or a stock purchase agreement drafted and sending it along. We're not there yet, but there are many, many ways. If you know what you're doing, you can make research more efficient, writing more efficient, editing more efficient, polishing more efficient. And that is really great for everyone involved, even the lawyers themselves, right? Because the more time you spend kind of proofreading and doing really kind of tedious legal research and revisiting the same paragraph over and over again, the less time you have to really think about the big picture of your document, and more important, think about the big picture for your clients. Okay, number two. So number one, talking about generating documents and improving them. Number two would be looking at documents that are already a done deal. So I just heard recently that Claude just came out with its own legal tool that does contract review. So that tells you something right there. When you have due diligence, for example, in transactions, great Gen AI uses there. When you're looking at, regulations across jurisdictions or statutes across jurisdictions. So when you're looking at contracts, you're looking at documents. When you're looking at the law itself, public law, statutes, regulations, that's another fantastic use case where you can really digest lots and lots of information, lots and lots of text in little time, have it generate comparison tables, have it kind of delve into the details, spot anomalies, and the like. The last thing, which is not maybe as sexy, maybe not as exciting, but in the long run should really bring down the cost of legal services, is something that goes on within law firms themselves. So most of the larger law firms have what's often called like a knowledge management department, and that is really just sort of a way to have institutional memory to take all the different deals that the different partners have worked on, or all the different briefs or motions that the litigators have drafted, and get them all into one secure place. So that was something that was going on long before Gen AI exploded. But because of the pattern recognition capabilities of these LLMs, this is a really, really fascinating frontier right now. So you can imagine it's almost like you're taking the expertise of all the different partners in a law firm, their big brains and their experience as it's applied to different fact patterns and clients and their needs. And you're able to merge all that into something that's like, it's like a mini LLM. So as my opening story suggested, we are in a state of flux, but I'm not going to say that I'm neutral on the pros and the cons. In the throes of this, as I said, I do recognize the risks. I live with them every day, in fact, professionally, but I'm seeing them fall a little bit like dominoes one by one. Generally, people have mixed feelings about the law, but in this case, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. These developments, in the end, will be really, really good for lawyers, but maybe even better for those who need them. Thank you.
Ross, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. Coming up at the top of the hour, we will have the Q&A panel. So for everyone that is listening live, type your questions into the Q&A box in front of you, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can during the live Q&A panel.